Hello and welcome to the Goals and Glory podcast. It's me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Goals and Glory, and I'm smiling like that wee boy that this book has made me feel like again. From Beastie to Bestie to Belgium by the brilliant Colin Leslie. I had a great chat to Colin and I said to him, listen, we need to get some of these characters onto a podcast and find out what it was really like being there. And thanks to Colin, he's hooked me up with some of these stars that were absolutely my heroes as a wee lad on the terrace in Easter Road. And today I am joined by one of those legends, a guy I couldn't believe came to play for my club, a guy I'd watched probably achieve at that point the ultimate in football, to score that goal in front of a packed Wembley, blue sky and sunshine. It was just the dream. And there he was standing in green and white playing for my team, and I was delighted to welcome him. So let's waste no more time and hear from the man himself. Please welcome the one and the only Mr. Keith Houchen. Hello, sir.
Hi there. Hiya, Bruce. How are you? Described it perfectly, actually. Blue skies, packed Wembley. What a place.
And you were never given a chance. I mean, it was all about Tottenham. It was a bit like the Wimbledon Liverpool. It was a bit like the Wimbledon Liverpool final. It was how well Liverpool were going to do it. You weren't given a chance for that final.
We played on that a lot, though, building up to it. But we knew it was going to take out of a good side to beat us that day. We were really ready for it. Don't worry about that. It was good. It was okay being the underdogs coming into it. There was no pressure on us at all, really. Nobody expected anything from us.
When I said I was going to be doing this with you, a mate of mine who's a Coventry fan, Rich, just sent me a message saying, please just tell him thank you.
Yeah, I get that a lot, actually. Yeah. But it was just what, like you say, the way you're talking about it was exactly the same for me. I mean, 10-year-old watching, I think the first game I saw on TV was a Leeds United game. I remember watching Eddie Gray doing his dribbles and that in Wembley, and it was just, I was awestruck. And, when you're like your 10-year-old and you say, that's what I want to do. I want to be at Wembley in an FA Cup final. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. And it didn't look very likely for a long time in my career, I'll tell you. But when it happened, wow, it was just exactly how would you imagine it to be. Like I say, it's always blue sky. It's always sunny. Crowd was fantastic. And I think I was very lucky. We always say, all the ex-Coventry lads, we were very lucky. That we played in a bit of a classic, really. We played in an end-to-end cup final, which makes it all the more sweet, really.
But there was so much about that because you'd been scoring in the run-up to it, so you must have arrived at the final thinking, I'm in here, I've got a chance here.
Oh, I fancied myself, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I didn't play a lot of games that year. I kept getting injured early in the season. I got an injured foot, and I got broken ribs very early on when we played against Arsenal. And I even nearly missed the cup final because the lad who played for us, a lad called Jake Finlay, goalkeeper, used to go fishing and bring stuff in, and he brought this big fish in, and I said, well, I'll have that. I mean, I've never been able to prove this over the years, Bruce, but I'm sure that blooming fish that Jake Finlay brought in knocked me back. So I missed all the build-up, believe it or not, because the team went up to Wembley 2 or 3 times to train, on the pitch and have a look around the dressing rooms and the whole shebang. And I'd only ever seen Wembley as a supporter, walking up Wembley Way and going in and standing behind the goals and things, So that day, pulling up to the big green doors, it was like going into fairyland for me. The gates opened, we've gone in, at Wembley, it was like a slope at the old Wembley. So you had your dressing rooms and things, and all you could see about 50 metres up the top was a square of blue sky and light. That was all you could see. So you go up in your suit, obviously, that you do the walk down in your suit, which is amazing as well. It's all part of the Wembley experience. But then getting changed and everything, and then you stood in the line in the tunnel and looking up at this square of light, and then you kind of walk up, and then I remember glancing over to my left, and there's Glenn Hoddle and Ardillies and people like that, and I'm thinking, flipping it, you're going to do this, you're here, you're at Wembley. And then you break, but that little square of light becomes this cacophony of, honestly, I couldn't even describe it. You walk out and it lifts you off your feet, carries you across the pitch. So, yeah, it was, like I say, it was just a magical experience, really. Everything that we expected it to be. And we were always confident until they scored after 3 minutes.
Yeah. What is it? Mike Tyson says you can have all the plans in the world until you get smacked in the face.
Yeah, exactly. Well, any football club you're at, the last thing the manager says is keep it tight for 10 minutes, don't they? Look, lads, we've got the strength, we've got the capability. Just don't let them get on top because they've got world-class players. And then we all kind of looked around. I remember me and Cyril Regis glancing at each other, kind of thinking, we're not going to get absolutely battered here, are we? Because you couldn't have stopped that goal. It was an amazing goal that Clive Allen scored. It was so good. It was Waddle dropped a shoulder, whipped it in on his right foot, and Clive Allen went 1 way 2 yards and came back 3 yards. And it's in our net. Now, if they'd have done that all day, how do you stop it? What are you going to do? We did kind of glance around and think, oh, my God, what's going on here? But we were straight back. We got straight back.
It was the FA Cup final used to be the big, like winning the league was obviously a big deal. But the FA Cup, that one...
I think it was the biggest. I think it was the biggest thing.
And it was the thing you dreamed of when you were playing when you were playing in the park. You were scoring the winning goal in the FA Cup final. You weren't scoring the winning goal in the league.
Yeah, and I've said it thousands of times over the years. It was like the Holy Grail, and you never got to play at Wembley, Bruce. That's the thing. Unless you played for your country, nobody got to play at Wembley. It was sacred ground. So that's why you see all these heartbroken people in semi-finals and that over the years, don't you? Where they, in the old days, because they got that close to playing at Wembley, that close to being in a cup final. And it really was. It was evident. And European football was nothing like it is now. I mean, European football's obviously taken over, hasn't it? But if you were British, if you were anybody, to be honest with you, if you were anybody, the showcase game and the big kind of ending to the season was the FA Cup final. It was just something that everybody wanted to do. And I always said, before I said, look, I'll retire. The day I do it, if I do it, I'll retire. And if I get a winner's medal, I'll put it up in lights above my front door. So I've been pulled on that a few times over the years because I played a lot longer afterwards.
But you played the FA Cup with the other clubs you were in. But even at Coventry, was that something you spoke about? Like, come on, lads, let's have a good cup run.
The FA Cup run? No, not really. It just evolved. Just something that happened with us. I mean, I think we beat Bolton at home. Probably the first time we played, and then we were away at Manchester United. So, it was Manchester United at Old Trafford. So it was like, oh God, that's a tough one, isn't it? We never even thought of that. Coventry had about 4 or 5 seasons of just staying out of the bottom 3 and just staying in the old First Division, which is now the Premier League, as you know. So I think the start for the whole season was all about getting a bit of backbone into the team, bringing different players in. People like myself and Dave Phillips came in, who could battle things out a bit more on that, And I think the cup run itself just evolved really. We went to Man U and won, and played really well. Actually, we won 1-0, but probably should have won 2 or 3. And I think that was the day that John Sillett, who was a real larger than life character, real funny bloke. I mean, it was all about getting the dressing room going. Really, it was the best dressing room I've ever been in. And he came out afterwards and says, "That's it. Our name's on the cup." So it just went on from there. We had to live with that. We got asked that all the time. We were like, "Well, John's decided it is, so let's see." And we just kept going. Each round came. We played brilliantly. Dug in. Got out of jail we got out of jail at Stoke City away. I didn't think we deserved to win that game, but was meant to be. And then, like I say, got all the way to Wembley and played in the Classic. Really.
When you scored that goal,
yeah.
I mean, I think I've actually read that you said this, that you don't really think, and I hate it when you hear pundits or commentators saying, "Oh, you can see what he was thinking there," because there's no thinking. You're responding. It's muscle memory. It's because you've done it so many times. But when that ball comes across, you were a wholehearted player. You've launched yourself at that ball.
It's instinct. You're dead right. I mean, football is a game of instinct. I mean, we're obsessed with tactics and all the rest of it. And you need, tactics is all about being in the right positions at the right times, and you're always going to get out of position. But sometimes like that, I've said it, it just comes together, doesn't it? There's no rhyme or reason that ball for Benno to have played the cross like he did, Dave Bennett, for the timing of the run, because you could have just, if you'd have been there a split second earlier or a split second later, it just all comes together, doesn't it? It's like a perfect dance, isn't it? And I see it now. I see players that lunge they go with their feet all the time, don't they? And you think, why didn't you dive? You'd have got that. You'd have scored then, dear me. So yeah, it was just once I'd lost my marker and got into the space, I was just in my run and the ball coming in just all came together perfectly. But I had to dive to get there, obviously, and I got there in plenty of time. Really, it's like it is split seconds, but I was there. And I always say, imagine if I'd missed it. Imagine if I'd headed it wide or headed it against the post. Or because it seems like somebody else now. It's been that long. It's a long, long time ago. But when I look at the pictures, if you really look at it, I'm sure I'm smiling as I'm heading it. I'm convinced.
It's a moment that everybody in my generation and probably 2 or 3 generations in front of me remember, because everybody stopped to watch the FA Cup final.
Exactly.
Everybody watched. You watched all the build-up, because at the time I was so young, I was watching the kids' TV in the morning, but I'm pretty sure players were being interviewed on kids' TV on the Saturday
That's what
morning.
they used to do, yeah.
Grandstand started. There was the FA Cup final songs, and then the players walked out. You got to see them on their suits on the foot. I mean, it was just the whole dream just unfolded, didn't it?
Yeah, and that's exactly it, yeah. And it used to start about 10 o'clock in the morning. When I was a kid, I'd be up with my bottle of pop and my bag of Revels or whatever it was in them days. And you'd just get settled and you'd be seeing the players all day long in the hotel, getting on the bus, going to the ground. It was just a whole day thing. And that's it. That's exactly what it was like for us, from literally I was up. I don't know if you know this story, but I never got nerves before big matches, but I wanted it to be there. I wanted it to be happening. And I was rooming with a lad called Dave Phillips. We stayed in a beautiful hotel right by the Thames, and the mist was... I woke up about 5 o'clock and the mist was coming off the Thames and that, and I was kind of fidgeting, and I thought, I need to do something here. So I got some kit on and just went for a jog up and down the side of the Thames and that, around the hotel and stuff. Just trying to imagine what the day was going to be. Was it going to be a disaster? Was something great going to happen? Was I going to score? Obviously, I wanted to score. Were we going to win the cup? Were we going to actually hold it up? Because he didn't do it like nowadays, where they pass the cup along. Your captain held it up and down he went. But just sort of dreaming about that, really. And lo and behold, what a day it turned into, didn't it? It was just fantastic for us. It couldn't have gone any better, really, could it? I mean, at the time, you're doing your job, you're playing and you're working, and it's work. And scoring the goal was great, and I knew it was a special day, and I knew we'd done really well, and I knew it was a pretty good goal. But it was only maybe a few weeks afterwards when I started to see the pictures, these incredible pictures that they took, because they had cameras in behind the goals and behind me, and it started to bring that goal up even higher. Do you know what I mean? It was like, oh, look at that. When you see it. If you watch it in real time, it's like he's edited it and he's fell, but it looks like I'm flying through time, doesn't it? I'm always going to be there, hanging in the air,
When you watch it back, is there a disconnect now? You said that it happened a while ago. Can you relive it in any way?
Yeah, I can still relive it in my mind the whole day, because I was so obsessed with the cup final and the Wembley thing. I went a couple of times as a young player, Bruce, when I was 17, 18 at Hartlepool. Drove down, slept in the car on the M1 at South Mims. First time I went, I think it was Ipswich Arsenal was the first one the live one that I first went into, and just blew me away. Just couldn't believe it, the colour and the noise and the fans. It was just the humour of the place. It was so funny the way they bounced off each other and that. So, yeah, I can relive it all in my mind, because I was determined to. I always thought, I'm going to remember coming up Wembley. I'm going to remember sitting on the bus. I'm going to remember coming into the ground. And I can. But doing this it's been over 30 years, hasn't it? 35 years, I think it is this year. And when you're talking about a particular goal and a particular time, you do begin to wonder, is it muscle memory? Is it because I've said it so many times? But I can vividly remember that day. Yeah, I'll never forget it. I couldn't possibly, could I? And if you speak to the other lads, because we do see each other quite regular, they're all the same. They all realise it was a very special time in our lives, you know.
There'd be so many boys in that squad that never did it again and had never done it before.
No, that was why it was so special, though, Bruce. It was, and I think we knew at the time when we got to Wembley, it was almost like this could be a one-off for us. This could be the one big game of your career. And not that there weren't lots of other big games, but you know, the big one where do you show up or do you disappear? You know, that sort of thing in your mind. As a pro and as an athlete, you're always thinking, am I going to deliver? Am I going to let people down? And I think we that's what we're most proud of, I think, the fact that we delivered on the day and we didn't let anybody down and we played the way that we were capable of. And we didn't get hammered 8-0 after that, went 1-0 up after 4 minutes, you know.
when you're walking out and, you know, there's that sea of colour and there's, I think, there's 80,000 people there that day.
I think it was 100. I think it was 100,000 that day. The old Wembley.
Are you able to pick out family? You know, were your family there? I
did. Yeah, my family weren't really mad about football. They didn't go to. I mean, I played nearly 700 games football, but they didn't come to very many. But I got them all there that day. My mum and dad and different people, a couple of my brothers and what have you. And I found them when we were out on the suits. I saw where they were stood. I saw where they were sat. Sorry, where the seats were. I knew where my wife was. She was the wives and that were obviously round near where the cup gets raised and that sort of thing. But I scored in that end, and that crazy, because I've never done that before. I've never jumped up and down when I've scored a goal. So it just shows you how much it meant to me. I couldn't do that now. You'd need an ambulance waiting and a stretcher, that's for sure. A dislocated hip. So I've scored and I've hit the ground and I'm up and I'm running and I'm over the barriers and I'm jumping, but they weren't there. They were over more to my right. So I was jumping. It was all Coventry, obviously. I was jumping with joy, really. And the lads, if you ever watch it, the lads never jumped over the barriers. They were like, this was one of the hardest days they were ever going to have. They said, we weren't wasting any energy over that barrier. It was like as the game won and they were coming over to me, you know, Houchen, what a goal, come on, we can do this. But this, I think Nick Pick and Mickey Jim were the closest behind me. And they had a decision to make. You can see the pictures when I get up and I'm running and they said to me, are we going to run after Houchen here? Because he's off on one. Dave Bennett was just stood on the touchline with his arms in the air. So they thought, right, the easiest run is Benno. So they ran across to Dave Bennett, you know. Yeah.
all about the assist. It was all about the assist.
Yeah. Well, that's what you've got to remember, though. The amount of energy you can waste. The adrenaline rush you get when you score a goal is just incredible. But the amount of energy that you can waste in a celebration, do you know what I mean? You've got to be really careful.
I love it. And it had taken you a while to get there. I mean, there must have been a part of you, the clubs you were in. And
oh, yeah, I did. I wouldn't have. Yeah, I wouldn't.
And was that I mean, when you got the jump to Coventry, that was, you know, that was quite a big deal to go.
Massive deal for me. Yeah,
up to the top division.
Well, I'd always, as a kid, I'd just missed out on England schoolboys and stuff. I was very good in my year, and I played for the town team, played for the county. Got called up to Crystal Palace, where most of the English schoolboys were, to be a part of that setup. It was really hard being a northerner to play for England schoolboys. It was mostly from down south, as you can imagine. You had to be exceptional. So, you know, as a kid, it was all going on for me. But then getting released from Crystal Palace by, it was Malcolm Allison actually at the time, and Terry Venables, people like that. I was a real tall, skinny kid. I was a bit like, as a kid, I was like, Peter Crouch never grew out of it, did he? But I was like that, and I always remember them getting me in and saying, "Look, you've got the potential to be a top footballer, but you need to put weight on. You need to strengthen up. Maybe try." They said try drinking Guinness, and I've been doing it ever since. Guinness never lets me down. Yeah, but yeah, and it was just a struggle. It was a struggle getting my first break. I got released at Crystal Palace. Almost went to Villa. And just by accident, really went playing quite local for me. It was a club called Hartlepool. I played against them, and the manager, a fella called Billy Orr, my hero Billy Orr, he played for Middlesbrough. He was right back at Middlesbrough. And they literally signed me that week. I played against them in a FA Youth Cup game for a local Middlesbrough team. And they brought me in, asked me to come in and train, which was mad. You know, I remember going home thinking, oh, if I could just, it was the lowest of the low, don't get me wrong. It was, the ground was ramshackle and falling down. There was no training facilities. The crowds were down to about 1,600. The dressing rooms were as big as my table I'm sat at here. I mean, it was just, it was such a tough place, but a really brilliant place to start, you know. And within a week, within a couple of weeks, they sold a lad called Malcolm Poskett, got sold for about 80,000 to Brighton, which was massive money. That was like millions in them days. And they offered me a contract. I always remember them getting me in and saying, look, we'll give you £30 a week we'll offer you a professional contract. And I was 17, and I was just walking on earth. I remember thinking, I'm a professional footballer at last. I'm a professional footballer. And got straight in the team, more or less got straight in the team, scored a couple of goals, and then finished top goal scorer for about 4 years in a row, just bang, bang, bang. But couldn't get any further on, you know, kept nearly getting moves and not quite getting them. And a lot of people were coming and looking at me, and then other people were getting the moves and that sort of thing. So, and a manager called Ken Knighton, who was manager, Ken Knighton and Frank Clark were managing at Sunderland, tried to take me to Sunderland. And the chairman decided he wanted to get another young kid in instead, and he was called Ali McCoist. Do you remember him? So they signed Ali McCoist, and I stayed at Hartlepool. And then Ken Knighton and Frank Clark got sacked and went down to Leyton Orient. And as soon as they went to Leyton Orient, they took me to Leyton Orient. So that was like the story of my life at the time. And Leyton Orient were trying to get into the first division, so they signed people like David Peach, who just won the FA Cup at Southampton. They had Mervyn Day in goal from West Ham. A couple of big centre-halves from West Ham. They had Barry Silkman, who'd come from Man. So they were building to get into the first. So I was thinking, right, this is it. I'll go there, score a few goals. We're into the first division. My career's off and running. I was 22. And we got relegated the next season. Had to win the last game of the season against Sheffield United not to get relegated back into the old fourth division where I'd come from. And it was like, oh, you know, what do you have to do? What can you do? So my career was very like that, Bruce. Yeah, it was like that. And then I got the opportunity to go to York City, which is where I'm not far from now. And that was like a breath of fresh air for me. It was the first time in my professional career. I think I would have been 23, 24, and they didn't lose. You know, just when you go into a dressing room and they just don't lose. And they won the old fourth division by a mile. I think we were the first team to score 100 points. You know, they changed it to 3 points for a win. And just absolutely loved it. And it just reinvigorated me, that. And then I was like, right, I've got to play higher up. I've got to play higher. I knew I could play higher up. There'll be lots of players that tell you that. It's getting the opportunity sometimes, isn't it? And eventually it came with Coventry, went to Coventry. And that very first season, believe it or not, we won the FA Cup. So, you know, it was worth waiting for, wasn't it?
How do you deal with those downs mostly? Ups are probably the easier thing to deal with. How do you deal with those?
I think you've got to be really strong mentally. I think that's why lots of players do drift down the leagues and drift out of football and stuff, because it can be really cruel and it doesn't give you a lot. And the feeling that professional footballers have when they lose, you talk about mental health and everything now, but you can barely speak at home for a week till the next match. I mean, it can get the highs and lows are so massive. I mean, it was why I walked away eventually at 36. I thought I can't keep going right up there and right down there. I just want to sit there, you know, for the rest of my life and just swim with the tide a bit. Because it can be like that. And you've got to be really, really mentally strong, I think, and keep going and keep going. And when your breaks come, it's like anything in life, I suppose, isn't it? Your break comes, you've got to take it. I mean, you've got to stand up and take it. But no, I mean, there was a lot of dark times. I remember when I left York and went to Scunthorpe, that was the only time I came home and said to my wife, Yvonne, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to get where I want to be. So I'm going to sign for Scunthorpe. It was a lad called Frank Barlow, who'd been my coach at Chesterfield when I was a kid. And I said, I like Frank. It's a nice little club. I've just got to face the fact I'm going to be playing in the third and fourth. Everybody wanted me in the third and fourth division. There wasn't a club I couldn't have gone to, you know. But the bigger clubs, you know, where you wanted to be, you know, your Wembleys and things. And that was the one time where I almost quit on it, where I was like, and then lo and behold, literally a month later, I was there a month, and I had two First Division clubs. I had Leicester City and Coventry came in for me both at the same time. So I mean, that's the strangest thing, isn't it? What can I say about that? You give up, and then they want you. When I was wanting it so bad, and I would have done anything, nobody. It was like fishing, little nibbles and not getting a bite, you know. So yeah, that was the strangest thing. That.
So do you think, with hindsight, then looking back on that period, did you relax and maybe did you approach it differently?
No, I was nothing any different whatsoever. I forget his name now. My brain's up. I remember the lad who was. It was on the tip of my tongue, Irish lad, who was manager at Leicester. He tried to sign me loads of times. He'd been at Tranmere, all these players. You know, I was always in demand in the lower leagues, third and fourth division, because everybody knew what I could do at that level. I was big centre forward who could play a bit and was scoring goals and could link in and stuff. He's on the tip of my tongue, nearly there. So he knew about me anyway, and I think John and George knew about me, but I don't know if you know the story. We finished at Scunthorpe. I played about 6 games towards the end of the season. And we were all, last game of the season, we've come in and the manager, Frank's gone, lads, talking about small squads. We've got no players. We've got 2 reserve games left and we've got no players left to play in them. So some of you are going to have to play it. There's one on a Tuesday night, one on a Thursday night. And I was like, oh, Frank, can I play on Tuesday? Because I'm going away on Friday. We used to go, as soon as the season finished, you used to just go bang. Because you needed it. You needed to go away and just switch off from it. And they said, all right then. And it just happened to be Coventry at Scunthorpe, at the old Scunthorpe ground. And I think I might have scored 3. It was just one of them lovely warm summer evenings, and it was my last game, and I fancied it, and I was doing all my little bits and pieces. And then they came straight in and signed me. I went down. They said, "Can you go down? You can meet. If you go to Coventry, you can stay at Coventry for the night, have a chat with them, and then drive over to Leicester. They're right next to each other, and then have a little chat there." And you decide. I was like, God, I've got a choice. I've got a decision to make. But there was, when I went, Coventry was an incredible club, Bruce, by the way, in them days. Everything about it, the ground, I think it was the first all-seater in our country or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They had I mean, I'd been used to going down the chippy at the end of the road or going to the cafe on the corner and all that sort of thing. They've got like a Michelin restaurant in the ground above the car park where I'm coming in, and if they wanted to be impressing me, they did. That's for sure. You know. So and then they put us in a beautiful hotel, and I'm sat there. We had champagne, me and Yvonne, and I said, you know what? I've made my decision. I'm not even going to go over to speak to Leicester. I'm going to stay here and give it a go, and that's what we did. Yeah.
And there was some quality players in that Coventry squad.
Oh, yeah, brilliant. And I knew, the thing was, Bruce, so I knew a lot of them because in the old days, you know, you used to play your way through the divisions to get to the top level. Obviously, there was always big name players who always played top level. But I knew a lot of them lads. Trevor Peake, who I was centre half, should have had an England cap. I played against him at Lincoln. Steve Grozovic, our goalkeeper, again, I think he did get an England cap, didn't he? But he should have had more. I mean, he was so unlucky. He was at part-time with Chesterfield with me. In fact, I thought he was one of the coaches because he looked like a bloke when we were all... And he came and sat next to us talking, and I was thinking, why is the coach sat with us being one of the lads? And I realised he was just one of us. But Anogie barely played at Chesterfield before Liverpool took him and signed him. So, yeah, I knew him. Mickey Ginn I'd played against at Peterborough. Dave Phillips I'd played against at Plymouth. I mean, Dave Bennett and his brother were both at Cardiff. So I knew the side. I knew, you know, there was nothing. It wasn't the type of dressing room where you were going to walk into and be ill at ease because there were just lads the same as me. Do you know what I mean? And they had total respect for me, to be honest, and same as I did for them. I think our only icon, not that he ever behaved like that in any way, was Cyril. Really, you walked in and sat down, and there's Cyril. You're getting changed, and Cyril's just here. And then you take your gear off, and I used to be in pretty good nick. I was a big, strong lad, but Cyril took his top off, and you thought, flipping heck, is that what you have to look like to play for England and that? Cyril looked like he just pumped weights for 3 hours before he came in, just getting up in the morning, So there was only really Cyril who was like, that little bit of glitter dust. And he'd had 2 or 3 quiet years where things weren't happening for him. So the whole season was just built on itself. I think Cyril ended up getting another England cap that year. So, yeah.
Who did you look at when you were a kid and model yourself on, or think that's what it is to be a professional? Who were your heroes?
It wasn't really any like big centre forwards and that. It was people. I was like you say, Eddie Gray always struck, and he's a gentleman, by the way. I've met Eddie lots of times since he's always at the Leeds matches and things. I think Eddie Gray was the one that sticks in my mind as much as anything. He was like a maestro. The ball was stuck to his foot, wasn't it? But no, I just used to watch them and just think, what a great thing to do. But to be a footballer, you'd see. I remember I would have been about 10-year-old watching the 1970 World Cup, and we had a better team then when we won it, didn't we? And you thought, we're going to. I remember as a 10-year-old thinking, we're going to cruise all the way to the final and win this and be so good. And we were cruising against West Germany. I mean, little did I know that was going to be like a 40-year habit that was going to carry on. And we just suddenly threw it away. And then I always remember being heartbroken with that, but thinking, right, if I ever got to that level, we wouldn't throw it away, Just like any kid, really, Bruce. Just like you, I'm sure, no doubt.
Yeah, and then as you're going through the game, and Hartlepool, Orient, York, Scunthorpe, were there people that were mentors to you? Were there people that helped you when things were tough, or were you coping with most things on your own?
I think I tended to cope with most things on my own, and I think I developed a bit of an attitude really that came out most by the time I got to Hibernian. Believe it or not, I just had this mechanism where I didn't like people putting me down or not treating me right, I always felt like I was really honest on the pitch. I was big and strong and hard because I'd made myself that way. I'd worked really hard at it, and I didn't like cheap shots and stuff. I didn't like anything cheap going on. And in the game in the 80s, you used to get nipped and kicked and stood on. And I used to, the older I got and the bigger and stronger I got, I used to start to overreact. But my biggest mentor was Billy Horner, because he gave me my professional contract. He believed in me. And he worked with me. I went back to Hartlepool as the manager. It's funny how life goes in circles. And I had Billy as my right-hand man. And he always said to me, he used to sit in the office with me and say, I knew out of all the people I worked with over the years, you were the one that was going to get there eventually. I just knew it. So there's nothing, when somebody talks to you like that, it's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good to have belief. Now, when you came to Hibs, you came and do you think about transfer fees when you're a player? Do you care how much you're worth?
No, I think I'd probably stayed a year too long at Coventry. I always moved clubs, and this was just something that happened to me. I used to start feeling like I needed another challenge after a couple of years. Early on, it was because I wanted to be higher up. But the same feeling when I was at Coventry, it was there again. It was like I was just that type of person. I think I needed to move and get that challenge again. And I was like millimetres away from signing for QPR, to be honest. It went down and sat with Trevor Francis, wasn't it? Who was the manager at the time, and sat in the office, and we worked this. Incredible. Talking about money, I mean, nowadays they're earning hundreds of thousands of pounds a week. But I was going to be earning about £1,200 a week, which was phenomenal. This was 1980, 88, 89. But I didn't want to live in London. I kept thinking, I can't live in London, because I'd done it when I was at Leyton Orient. It put me off. I think I was too young when I went to Leyton Orient, and I don't think talking about mentors and people to be there for you. I don't think I had anybody. I was always trying to do everything just myself. And so we did in the end, and he kept getting onto the chairman, and the chairman kept sort of going. They thought it was about money, I think. He was saying, give him another 200, and I was thinking, it's not about money, you know. And then it was like, just buy me a season ticket every year, and I'll live where I do, and it's only an hour in and out. I'll come in and out on the train, you know, that. And when away, that was all fine. And then that fell through in the end. John Sillett got me in and said, oh, they've pulled the plug on the deal because they think you're a mercenary, is what they said. And it was like, it wasn't me that was wanting more. They kept throwing more money at me. I was just trying to, you know, because it was never about money with me, honestly. Never really about money. I just wanted to achieve. So I didn't want to walk away from football when I'd finished and go, well, you didn't do enough or anything like that, you know. So the Hibs deal, the transfer deadline had finished. It was all over in England. I nearly went to Bradford, who were up and coming again at the time. That fell through. And it was all over with. And Alex Smith, I was waiting to go out with Dave Phillips. He was waiting to pick me up. We lived in the same village, just outside of Leamington Spa. And just as he was, we didn't have mobile phones or anything in them days. It was all your landlines and that, wasn't it? Everything was landlines. And the phone went, and it was Alec Miller. But there were real Mickey takers. The whole dressing room were comment. I mean, real Mickey takers. And it was this, how are you doing? Yeah, all right, big man, and all this. And I was like, I am fine, mate. Would you like to come and play in Scotland? And I was like, oh, I'd love it, you know. And I was just going along with it, honestly. He said, and I'd never heard of Alec Miller. I didn't know Alec Miller was. And I didn't know, I've got to be honest, I didn't really know a lot about Scottish football. I really didn't, except it was starting to become the place to be, wasn't it? If you go back, Sky had come in, and a lot of the top English lads were going to Rangers and places. And then so I put the phone down and went out with Dave Phillips and the lads, and he was saying, well, that's how some of the lads did know. I remember Dave Speedy saying, oh, you should go and play in Scotland, Houchen. They'd love you, and you'd love it. Hibernia. And I was saying, honestly, where is it? They said it's in Edinburgh. I mean, I never even knew Edinburgh was such a beautiful city. I used to go on my holidays as a kid. We used to drive down in an old Bedford van, 5 of us. We were really poor. It used to take a week to get there, and we'd go to the Highlands and everything, you know, and then come home again. And I just thought that was Scotland. You know, I'd never been to like the big cities and things. So yeah, and that's how it came about, really. And then he actually flew down. He came down and spoke to me at Highfield Road, Alec, and he put it, and he did. He sold it really well, and I thought, God, what a challenge! I was 25, 26. It was a perfect time for me, really. I was in perfect, you know, stage in my career to go and deal with it, you know, physically, because it's a tough, as you remember, Bruce, it's a really tough league, isn't it? And I just thought, yeah, why not? It'd be brilliant. That was but I mean, you could never have prepared me for. They flew me down, I think, on the Wednesday. I think it was something like the Wednesday. I flew down. The chairman picked me up, and he was driving me around Edinburgh to my hotel. He was saying, "This is Princess Street," as if I should know where Princess Street. I was looking, thinking, well, it's just a road with shops on, you know. All of that. Honestly, I was so naive. And then dropped me in my hotel, and then we went up. I remember going up and training at the ground, and brilliant. I mean, absolutely brilliant ground. Highfield,
Easter Road,
absolutely brilliant. But really, I think we're really run down, and but I remember being in the middle of it, and you could see all the hills around, couldn't you? You could see all the mountains and the hills, and think, oh, what an absolutely fantastic place to play football. And then they put me back in the hotel, then they picked me up and they said, we've got a game on Saturday and it's Hearts away. Well, I didn't know. Nobody. I'm on the bus, and I remember like Sir Joe Tortolano and people on the bus saying, are you ready for this, big man? And I was saying, well, yeah, I'm just playing. They were saying, no, but are you ready for this? And I was going, why? They were saying, you're going to fucking find out, you know. I was like, oh, right. And God, did I fight? I needed an iron lung after about 10 minutes. I was like, I thought, this can't keep up at this pace for night. It cannot play like this. And we'd actually had one session and one little set piece what we'd worked on where it got thrown, Neil Orr, the lads left the space, cleared the space for me. Neil Orr played it and I come in and we did it in train and it was like, yeah, that's not bad. Well, it only came off absolutely perfectly, didn't it? He's put it in the perfect spot. I've gone up and attacked it, headed it top corner. And as I landed, I was just about to put my arm up and go like that. Well, all I could see was green shirts flying off all over the pitch, like jumping up onto the side of the railings. I'd never seen anything like it. But it dawned on me then. I thought, well, this is a bit of a special game, this, actually. Yeah, what an atmosphere that was that day. Yeah. So that was my introduction. That was my introduction to Hibs. And I remember sitting in the players' bar afterwards. There was two things I remember most. Feeling that knackered. I'd never felt that knackered since we played the cup final. Thinking you might have to just get a little bit fitter. You're fit, but you might just have to be a little bit fitter. And you couldn't get a lager in the players' bar. It was all cups of tea. I was like, well, can't we have a lager? We used to have it on the bus and everything. There was nothing. It was like, oh my God, yeah. But it was brilliant. Yeah, I loved it. And that day, I remember thinking that day, this is brilliant. Yeah, this is going to be really good.
So how does Alec Miller get hold of? Does he just look up Keith Houchen in the phone book and give you a call?
I think he'd negotiated with the club, with John Sillett and people first. And obviously they'd been trying to get me and looking at me. And then there were,
So when he said, he said he sold it to you, how did he sell Hibs? Did he sell, this is the role that we want for you, this is where the club's going?
Yeah, this is where we go. We're in. They just got back into Europe, hadn't they? First time in so many years, and they were in the semi-finals of the Scottish Cup. And I remember thinking to myself, whoa, I bet there's not many people who've got two. I bet there's not many people who've got a Scottish Cup medal. I know I'd done it the easy way because I think they were already in the final with it. But no, I mean, yeah, he went through the players. I mean, Steve Archibald was a draw for me, believe it or not. Stevie Archibald, was a great lad, Stevie. I think a bit misunderstood. Great, really funny lad, good lad. But then he went through the players, and he just signed Andy Gorham, who I knew was a top goalkeeper. Johnny Collins was in there. Gareth Evans was doing really well, who'd been released. I knew him a tiny bit because he got released at Coventry just as I was signing at Coventry. It wasn't difficult to sell it to me because I was ready for a new challenge, and I think it was good. It was good that the others fell through because I think it was the best thing. Looking back at my career, I think it was brilliant that I went and had a couple of years up at Hibs. I think it was fantastic. I wouldn't change any of it for the world. No.
There's a lot of the boys I've spoken to talk about the changing room at Easter Road, and it seemed to be quite a happy place. But you were an incomer. There was a whole load of them will have watched you score that goal in the cup final, so they've already got an impression of who Keith Houchen is.
Yeah.
What was it like going in there?
I didn't have a problem, honestly. I never had a problem whatsoever from the first day. I remember sitting there and Gareth had developed a Scottish accent straight away. So I thought, right, I'm going to have to work on that because I used to be able to do a brilliant Scottish accent by the time I left. But I used to deliberately come in on a morning, and say hello in a really nice posh English voice to them all, just to get the dressing room going. But no, you're dead right. They were just all great lads, really, really funny lads. If it's a funny dressing room and there's banter flying around, and you've got to be able to take it, and obviously they were giving me a few bits and pieces, and I like all that. I loved all that. I just thought they were all really good lads. But like I said, I found Alec very, very doer. The dressing room itself was brilliant, but he just started. It was just his manner. He was such a serious coach. You know what I mean? Even the sessions he did were so serious. I remember having stand-up barnies with him where I'd stand in the middle and say, look, I'm a footballer. I haven't got any A-levels. I don't know what you're talking about. And I was only doing it to be a twat, But He could kill it. The lads up from that era will probably tell you that. If he'd have just let himself go a bit, that could have been a really good team that could have really gone on and done stuff. But it was always back to the drawing board, back to the drawing board. I remember trying to hide the flipping thing once. We used to have it up here, and we'd all be in there. And I also had a habit of putting Russ Abbott. We all went to watch Russ Abbott at the Playhouse in Edinburgh. The lads all went to watch Russ Abbott in the Playhouse in Edinburgh. We all went one night with the wives and that. And afterwards, they all said, "Houchen, you're a ringer for Russ Abbott." So I started. If Alec Miller or any, I did it at all my clubs afterwards. Actually, got me in a lot of trouble. But they used to put the lineup on the whiteboard in the dressing room, and I used to always scribble my name out and put Russ Abbott, you know. But anyway, one day I'd picked the whole. I'd gone to the lads. I'm fucking sick of this, and I picked the whole board up and I went and hid it in the shower. But just as I carried it in the shower and put it down, and the room went really quiet behind me, and Alec had walked in. But you know, he never even cracked a smile. Never cracked a smile. He just walked past me, picked his board up, and put it back, and just carried on sipping on the nothing. Yeah. But I'll have to tell you. Can I just tell you this funny story before I forget it? Because it's just cool. Back to me. We were another funny lad. Like, he used to get all these daft little things mixed up. He'd say like flat as a dodo, dead as a sheet. You know, instead of flat as a sheet, dead as a dodo. He used to get all these things wrong. And he had a big board as well, and I used to always scribble one of the names out.
Keith, who is this? Because we lost you there. Who are you talking about?
Oh, did you? This is a lad called John Rudge at Port Vale, manager. And I used to sign Russ Abbott on everything. If there was balls came in the dressing room, I'd sign my name, obviously, but I always put Russ Abbott on. And he had a big whiteboard, same as Alec Miller, and I'd rub the right. And he used to go through each player, which professional footballers find it so boring because you know the players, you've done the work, you don't need them to go. And anyway, I rubbed the right back out and put Russ Abbott. And then he came in and he got everybody sat down and he launched off onto this massive rant about somebody showing disrespect to the supporters. They're writing Russ Abbott on balls and programmes. And then I got really annoyed and stood up and said, "Oh, don't be so stupid. The people have a sense of humour, you know. If they see Russ Abbott, they know one of the players has wrote it, as long as they're getting all the order." And it went on, and this thing escalated, and people with Big Peter Swan, who was my mate, came in on my side, and he was bigger than me, Swanee, and we were living out. And that was a good dressing room, don't get me wrong. And then it all settled down, and he went, "Right, let's get on with the game." And he turned around and he went, "Right back, Russ Abbott." Well, the whole dressing room just fell on the floor. One of the funniest times ever, that one, yeah. Yeah.
Russ Abbott, there'll be many. Well,
no, I know. Yeah.
Remember Russ Abbott. Could you sing like Russ Abbott?
No. No. I got Pete Cormack with it once. We were travelling in Germany and we were at the place where he got the children. What was he called? The Pied Piper of Hamelin, wasn't it? We were playing in Hamelin and that. We had a big dinner. We were all sat there, and our tuxedos were having. And as the ball came to me, I signed it Russ Abbott and passed it on to Pete Cormack, was next to me, and he's doing that to find a space to sign it, and he's gone to me, "Houchen, Russ Abbott signed that." He thought he was there. He said, "It was me, Peter."
Brilliant. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So the bit I can remember sitting in the enclosure at Easter Road, and it was one of the European games, and I remember saying to my big brother Stuart, why is Keith Houchen in our box? And it was I think it was a Videoton corner, and I was saying, why is Keith Houchen in our box? He's a striker. And my big brother went, "Because he's fucking massive."
I used to win as many defensive headers as I did. That was my job. I'd come back and head it out, and then if it was up the other end, yeah. Was that the Videoton game then?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, what was that like? Because looking back, right, the reason I'm speaking to someone like you is this romantic idea I've got of when I used to go to Easter Road. But those, I'd heard my dad tell stories of Easter Road on a European night, and I can remember going to midweek games and it just felt special, because when I was a kid, a bit like you, football happened at 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon. There was no Friday night, Sunday lunchtime, Sunday
No, there
night
wasn't.
fixtures. It was 3:00 on a Saturday. So to then go to Easter Road where it's dark, you can see the floodlights as you're walking towards the ground. There's a different buzz about it. It's always, I mean, let's face it, it's Edinburgh. It's always cold anyway, but it's cold, and there's just a different feeling. But to go and watch two teams that I'm never going to get to see again, Videoton and Liège, that was properly special for me. What was it like for you as a player?
I think night matches, I preferred night matches to Saturday afternoons. I found it much easier to get up for a night match, just like you were saying, than Saturday afternoon. Sometimes you were slapping yourself and getting cold water, trying to get yourself going a little bit. I was just telling somebody about that the other week when I was playing golf. An old mate of mine, Kev Smith. I said I'll never forget it, because they were actually talking about the Queen's funeral and the pipers and things. One of my mates had said the piper when he played, and then he went out and walked away, and you just heard the pipes disappear. It was haunting, wasn't it? I don't know if you remember that from the Queen's funeral.
Yeah.
I said, well, I'll tell you something about the pipes. I said, we were playing in Europe and that, and it was like the buzz around Easter Road and that on these European nights. I couldn't even begin to describe to you. But I said, so we're in there and we're like hyped and ready to go, really ready to go at home at Easter Road. And then we've gone out into the corridor, and there was I can't remember how many pipers there was, but there was these pipers in front of us, and they started, and then they walked out onto the pitch at Easter Road. I said, honest to God, the hairs on the back of your neck were like up here. They were playing the pipes and we were walking behind them. And I mean, that must have been so intimidating for Videoton and Liège people. Dear me, unbelievable.
It just everything about those games was exciting, because it hadn't happened for so long, and we were sick of hearing of the glory days. We wanted them for ourselves.
I know, and I'd heard all about the Hibs glory days. Yeah, the famous 5 and stuff. I'd heard, yeah.
So to be part of that, did you, like a bit like the FA Cup final? Did you feel proud to be there at that moment?
I think it was one of the highlights of my career. That's just so that to be able to do that, because don't forget they weren't playing in Europe in England anyway. English clubs had been banned from Europe 5 years or something by that time. I mean, we didn't get to play in Europe when we won the FA Cup. There was no such thing. So it was new to me, but it was just the atmosphere. It was just the incredible atmosphere, home and away, both games. Because they used to put the two, what's the two lads? Not the Proclaimers. Was the Proclaimers, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We used to have we had, because they were Hibs, weren't they? They were always around the club, and we'd put it on. And I remember pulling into the car park at Videoton, and as we pulled it, it was playing that loud, 500 miles. The bus windows were going like this, and I remember the crowds having to part and looking up, thinking, "My God!" And looking at all of us out the window, going, like, they must have thought, "My God, they're mad! They're mental. We're never going to beat these." But I always said, and I've said it somebody did I've never done but somebody wrote a book about me. I'd called Jonathan Strange, wrote about my career, which I found fascinating. Actually, reading about itself, it's nice. But I did actually say, the greatest game I ever played wasn't the cup final. It was Videoton away, where everything that I'd ever learned from like 13-year-old at Crystal Palace to Hartlepool to right the way through, I think just came together on that night, and just everything that I wanted to do, and just everything comes off for you, everything. And it was just a great night, that. And I always remember the Hibs supporters wouldn't go. They were stuck by the tunnel. They wouldn't go home. They weren't leaving. They wanted to just stay there, And it was like we were in the shower, and out, and Alec Miller was saying, "Go back out and see them again. Go back out. They're not going anywhere. Go back out and see them again." And it was just a really, really special night, that, yeah.
But that was a big deal to go to play an away fixture.
Yeah.
So the fans that got there, that was a massive deal. What was it like?
Yeah.
Who did you?
It was for us.
who are the players did you have to look after? There's some of those boys I would worry about being on holiday, never mind going to play Livingston away.
To be honest, I think once I had a drink, I was one of the ones that needed looking after. I always remember wandering about with me and Stevie Archibald with an empty bottle of champagne. And we were just walking through these empty streets really early in the morning, just reflecting back on it, because it was a big night for even Stevie Archibald. It was just a big, it was a big thing for all of us, all of that cup run. It was amazing times.
And when you're coming home from that, there must have been a big down, from that massive high. What was
back
it
to
like?
league matches and that, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I found that as a player, that sometimes league matches you wouldn't be blasé, but you'd find it difficult to get yourself up for them, on a Saturday afternoon. Strange as it might sound, because it's what you do day in, day out. And I used to find sometimes on Saturday, not just the Hibs, but all the clubs I was at, Saturdays, I'd struggle to get myself that buzz, to go. But then European nights and obviously you have your big nights, don't you? Semi-finals and finals and things where it just happens automatically. But your bread and butter games, when you're going away to St Mirren or somewhere and it's cold afternoon and it's not a big crowd and there's not much of a buzz around. That's why football can be quite flat to watch sometimes, can't it? Football isn't always brilliant, is it? Sometimes you sit and look at it and think, oh, this is quite boring. So you always get, and that as a player when you're playing them, sometimes it's just like eking something out of it, isn't it? Getting something out of the game, which is probably why it's so hard to be a manager and a coach, because you can't do anything. It's the players.
When you're sort of reflecting back, communication then was different. We weren't on internet and mobile phones.
No, we didn't have all that. No.
Were some of the guys that you played with down south, were they curious about what was going on in Scotland, what the standard was like, what the opportunities were like?
Yeah, especially early on when I first signed. Used to go on the first night I went out. I went down to the Rutland at the end of Princess Street. It was the wrong end of town, apparently. Nobody told me. And a couple of the lads had come up. Dave Phillips, I remember in particular, was one of them. Nick Pickering, maybe it's 2 or 3 of the lads had come to stay. And we'd had a night out. And I remember going in the dressing room the next day and saying, people were quite aggressive with us last night, just staring and stuff. They says, well, where did you go? I said, down the other end, down Rutland. I don't think that pub's there now, is it? It was called the Rutland, wasn't it?
It's now
changed.
Kyle.
Yeah, I was there. I come to Edinburgh regular. I come up. We always have a weekend at least once a year. Because I've discovered Edinburgh since I stopped playing. I couldn't go out, could I? I couldn't go out in Edinburgh in them days. Blew my neck. So yeah, but there were, of course there were, and it was the place to play, really. I mean, like you say, half the Rangers team was the England team, wasn't it? I think you had Trevor and Gary Stevens playing. You had Butcher,
Gary Butcher, Mark Walters, Chris
Mark
Wood.
Walters. I mean, blow my neck. And we used to beat them regular, by the way, us Hibs, didn't we, in them days?
Yeah, you enjoyed that against Rangers, didn't you?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah. One of the things I found hardest, I think, in Scotland, and I think the other lads did as well, because the league was such a small league. I think it was only 9 or 10 of us in them days. You played each other 4 times, twice at home and twice away, and that made it a little bit more difficult. If you're playing against somebody that regular, a little bit. I found sometimes that could be a little bit more difficult. But we always did well against Rangers. Always used to be. Well, I remember beating them home and away one season, didn't we? Am I right?
No, that's right. Yeah. No,
we did, didn't we?
Yeah. Glory days, those, Keith.
Well, I go to Wembley now, though, Bruce. And last time I was there was last November. We were up, and I always go up on the top and just have a look across the city and stuff. Carlton Hill, and the ground looks amazing. I've never actually gone down and gone in, but the ground looks. It was very dilapidated when out. It was a great stadium to play in. The atmosphere was incredible.
There's no slope now.
Well, God, that bloody slope. I used to always say before a game. If you win that flipping toss, make sure we're running downhill in the second half, because I can't get up there. 20 minutes to go. And I was one of them players that would always chase in the corners and stuff. I didn't mind doing the work. So if it was right back at it, I'd say, put it in the corner and I'll chase it down. And I used to be 10 minutes ago, I used to be looking in the right back and going, Snoddy. No. And then if you didn't go, imagine the Easter Road crowd. If it looked like you weren't trying to get after the ball, they'd be like trying to tear your throat out. You big lazy. You couldn't. You're like, yeah. Oh God. I even tell my grandkids about the slope at Easter Road. So when Grandad was really young and fit, he had this hill to run up. And all the supporters fell out with him because he couldn't run up the hill.
I love it. You're still so highly thought of up here, Keith. When you're on a Saturday afternoon, when you're flicking through the results, is Hibs still...
Always, yeah, all my clubs, yeah. I look at Hartlepool, look at Hibs and Cov, then I always call them my two big clubs. I look at Hibs and Cov, and then I see how Hartlepool's got on, York City's got on, Scunthorpe, Leyton Orient are doing okay this year. If you look, they're not doing bad. I think they're top of the league. Who else have I missed out? Port Vale. I mean, they're an up and down. I mean, that was a really good club. Could be so much bigger, but they've got Stoke right next to them, and it kind of takes it away a bit, you know. But yeah, no, like I said, Bruce, I wouldn't change anything. If I was David Beckham, I don't think any of it would have been the same. I think I had to see all them lows and all that, the hardship of the lower leagues and stuff, to appreciate my time at Hibs and my time at Coventry and my time at Port Vale to a certain extent, because they were shotting money at it as well. But I think I earned the right. I think my 8 years of playing at that really good level, I'd earned the right to do it. And like I say, I think I've played for nearly 19 years. And I played in the best time. I say I was really lucky to play in the 80s because it was proper football. Men were men. You know, I took it as a personal affront if somebody could push me over. You had to be stronger than the next man. Now they go down like, you know, lightweights now, don't they? They fall over at contact. It was the other way around. But also we were playing a bit as well. Coaches were, you know, coaches like Alec Miller were getting people to play the ball, pass the ball, not just hit long stuff into corners and things. And I just think it was the best time to play. I think it was a great time. I think the crowds were brilliant. The grounds were brilliant. I used to be able to recognise every ground just by looking at a photograph of the pylons and that, you know, when I first retired, because I'd played almost everywhere, especially going up to Scotland as well. I'd played on almost every ground, you know.
Yeah, if somebody's got the time to study that one about
exactly
all the pitches you've played on. You've covered most of Scotland and England. It's brilliant. Are you a good spectator? Do you like watching the game now?
No, I don't. I worked for years, 15, 18 years doing the stats, same as Joe's doing. It was the Press Association to start with, and then it was Opta, and I would go to Bradford and Leeds and Middlesbrough, Newcastle, York, Scunthorpe, and I'd see the fourth division and the top level, and you could see that they were all trying to play whatever level you were watching at. They were all changing, but I think football's at itself. I've got to be honest. I think in this country, football's just eating. It was starting to eat itself before I retired, and I just think they've turned it into something that I don't like. When I do sit down and try and watch it, and it's just completely overworked with VAR and split level decisions, and you know, it was all about getting away with stuff, wasn't it, and having a chat in the pub after. It was all about me knowing I was slightly offside, but the lineman just didn't quite see me, so I've scored. It's a goal, isn't it? In my mind, that's a goal because I'm clever enough to get in and score. It's not meant to have lines and pictures and millimeters and fingernails, and you know, I don't think it's meant to be like that. Football, they've turned into like a scientific project, haven't they?
Yeah, well,
getting back to my thing about it being a game of instinct and joy and fun, really, it should be, shouldn't it?
Well, that's why I'm doing this, because my romance for that period of time is still there, still strong. I love it, and I think back to, you know, I still can't believe that Keith Houchen, the guy that scored that goal, came to play for my club, and it was brilliant. And I didn't really have awareness of what was going on off the field or the ins and the outs of things. I've learned all that looking back and reading things like this. But Getting to speak to you guys has been a huge treat for me.
Oh, yeah, good. Well, I'm pleased, yeah. But it was great, happy times. My wife says it was the best place we ever lived and we should never have left. I said, the trouble was, darling, they rode me out of town facing backwards on a horse when it all...
Yeah,
but we lived at North Berwick, Bruce, and my kids were really tiny, and we'd go to Gillane and Yellow Craig and all along that way, you know, and it was just amazing place. And then we lived next to the station at North Berwick, and you'd go 20 minutes into Edinburgh. It was amazing. Yeah, amazing times. Yeah,
happy days. Keith,
you don't realise, do you, till years later.
But now you have, and you appreciate it all the same.
Of course, I do. Yeah, I do.
Keith, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honour to speak to you. You've given me a heap of your time, and I've loved it. Thank you so much. And hopefully, when you're in Edinburgh, I might catch you one of your next visits.
I'll keep your number in my phone.
Thanks a lot, Keith. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, Ed.
How good was that? And it all came from this Bestie to Belgium. Great book. Absolutely loved it, by the great man, Colin Leslie. You can get it in all sorts of bookshops. You can get it in the Hibs store and also at bigcartel.com. If you've enjoyed the pod, you can get on Apple, Acast and Spotify. You can watch on Facebook and YouTube. I hope you've enjoyed it. There's more to come. If you did, leave us a review and tell your friends. And if you've got no ideas for that Hibby for Christmas, then this is the book for them. My name is Bruce Aitchison from the Goals and Glory podcast. I've absolutely loved it, and I can't wait till the next one. I'll see you all again very, very soon.